Welcome. Today, Mr. PEDRO DAS NEVES will be our guest, and we will have an interview with him in matters of penal institutions and his personal experiences. I'm starting with the first question. Mr. Neves, could you please introduce yourself?
My name, let me, I will trick you a little bit. I know that you are already recording, but I will trick you a little bit just to take one slide that easily helps me going through my my presentation. Okay, let me see if this one would help. No, yeah, this one could help. So I will share my screen if that's okay. Is that okay?
Completely okay. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So where is it? I'm struggling with your. Oh, here it is. Share my screen. Where do I share? Can you?
I think we need to make you host, sir.
Yes, please. Can you allow me?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
To do that. Okay, here it is. Okay, I see it here exactly. Okay, can you see my full screen now?
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it, yes.
Okay, so that's very simple. I just go through the numbers, okay? So my name is PEDRO DAS NEVES. I am the CEO of IPS, Innovative Prison Systems, which is a research and advisory company on justice and criminal justice issues and penitentiary issues, and also director of ICGS, Innovative Criminal Justice Solutions. I'm also a board member of ICPA, the International Corrections and Prisons Association, which is a worldwide organization that works towards the advancement of corrections around the world. So I have a son and a daughter. I have a dog and a cat. I live between two continents. So my office is in Lisbon, Portugal, and I live with my family in Toronto, in Canada. I started my life in prison when I was 16, 16 years old. So that was the first time I've been to a prison, so a long time ago. Then for some time I did not visit any prison anymore, and when I was 29 I came back and started to work with the prison service, and that has been happening over the last almost 20 years. I visited more than 41 prison services around the world. 44 prison services jurisdictions in 41 countries, and far more than 550 prisons. So I stopped counting at some point. So yeah, so that's my brief presentation about this. Any question? Oops, I don't want to show you my elephant. So any question?
I have a question, sir.
Yeah,
is that John Legend in the middle?
It is. That's why I show the presentation.
Okay.
Okay. It is.
That's pretty cool, sir.
It is. I will explain you later why is that in that picture, because that has an explanation, of course.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
I have the second question, I believe.
Yes.
Is it right, Dennis? Okay. Actually, my question was how many prisons you get to visit, but you already answered that.
Yes.
So
yes.
I need to move on to another.
Yeah, far more than 550, as I said, in 41 countries. So very, very different jurisdictions.
Okay, sir. This is Ilhan from the ICPA study group. And in this time of quarantine, our internship, everything is online. Yes. And we have to check everything online, and we're checking the ICPA network and the news that we can gather and some statistics in the meantime that happened in the pandemic period of time. And, you just answered my question, but we know you have a sociology degree.
Yes.
And you have an MA in Belgium, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And you've been working on criminal justice innovation since 2002.
Yeah.
My question is the Justice Trends, the magazine that you founded.
Yes.
What was the need? What did you believe that? What pushed you to found a magazine like this and to distribute in 12 countries?
It's not 12, 200, 120, in fact.
120.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Okay. So what? There are two main reasons why the magazine was produced. The first one was a very pragmatic and very commercial. Let's put it in that sense. So our organization is a private organization. So we are a company. We are a research and advisory company. So of course, as any other private organization that depends on the relationship with governments and contracts with the European Commission and so on, we need to make ourselves known in this sector, in this space. So there are very different ways of doing that and how we do that. So we participate in conferences, we have projects that involve correctional services from different parts of Europe. And we thought that having a publication would be also an important channel to communicate with our customers and partners. We thought, well, doing a leaflet, or having a catalog of what we do would not be something that would be well received in the sector where we work. But on the other hand, having a magazine where we have the possibility to communicate not only what we do, but also to bring together heads of service, ministers, experts, and so that they can present their views about what's going on in their own countries, we thought that this would be a good channel to communicate. So the magazine, on the one hand, is a communication instrument for what we do. On the other hand, it's also a way to share what's going on in the world about the world of corrections. So, and this is, you asked me, so what was the need that we felt? Well, the need that we felt was that there was no magazine or publication that would convey the views of the decision makers. And this is something that we have a lot of publications for experts, for psychologists, for lawyers, for persons that are involved in the day-to-day practice. But when it comes to decision makers, such publication does not exist. So what we really wanted to do was to have a way of communication where decision makers, director generals, ministers, and so on, they would know what others in their position are doing. So one very good example would be now with the COVID-19, and this happened at the beginning where we also published a guide for decision makers. Everybody was trying to see what others were doing because nobody knew what to do. So, having this kind of instrument is very relevant. So what we do is that we have it, of course, we have it online. And we have now the published version that we distribute in the different countries. Let's say a premium edition that we distribute to every Ministry of Justice and Director General of Prisons and Probation. And so the next edition will come out next week. And it's delayed, in fact, due to the COVID-19 situation and the confinement and everything that happened during this period. But it's coming out next week.
Thank you, sir. A little question for you. Have you ever get to visit any prisons in Turkey?
Yes, I visited different prisons in Turkey.
Do you remember which one?
It will be hard for me to pronounce the names of the prisons. But the prisons that I visited, in fact, the most. Well, wait a second. Maybe I have here. Wait a second. I have here scene. Wait a second. I have a CD with it's just a coincidence that I have a CD. Can it be Sincan prison?
Yeah. It's
Okay.
actually in the city we live in. It's,
Okay.
Sincan.
So okay.
It's called Sinjan.
Okay. So you call it
Sinjan.
Sinjan. So
Yeah.
it's a prison campus. It's a big prison. It's a big prison campus, and I visited several times now. So I visited. First time we had an overview, an overall perspective in the framework of one of the projects we had with the Ministry of Justice and with the Prison Service. We visited mainly the production areas, so workshops, textile, furniture, and so on. And we were looking at how the prison work was structured. I also visited several times in the framework of the radicalization prevention activities that we have together with the prison service in Turkey. And yes, so I visited. I also visited one prison in Istanbul. I don't remember the name, and some other one in other also nearby Ankara, but I don't remember the name honestly.
Thank you for your.
I also visited the probation services in Ankara. We have been working with the probation service in Izmir and also in Ankara. So I visited the probation service there.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Navas, I have a question.
Yes.
In your opinion, which penal institution has the worst conditions and why? Can you explain that?
I mean, from what I know, of course, because the world is huge and I don't know everything and visited everything. I must say that the worst detention conditions that I have seen were in some small countries in the Caribbean and in South America. Okay, so let's say Central South America, where there were huge problems of an overpopulation. So that means that there are a lot of people in prison, and there is a problem of overcrowding. So the prisons do not have the capacity to host everybody that is in prison. And I deliberately make the distinction between the overpopulation and the overcrowding, because in fact many countries, and that happens also in Turkey, where both situations exist. So many countries higher than it should be. And of course, that brings as a consequence the problem of overcrowding. If the prison service was not planned to host that number of inmates. So I would say that some of the prisons that were really that had the worst detention conditions were, I would say, Guyana in South America. Okay, it's a very, very small country. It's a former British colony, but where the conditions were hard to describe, I must say. You know, really very, very bad conditions. And in general, you know, Central American countries have very bad detention conditions. So this is one side of it. The other, of course, is the one that relates to degrading treatment or punitive treatment and so on. So one is in fact the detention conditions, and the other one is how the countries deal with their inmates in the prison service, let's put it that way. And in some countries, of course, some countries do not respect human rights because they don't have the proper detention conditions. Some other countries, they don't respect human rights because they just don't care about it. And of course, that is a dramatic situation. Yeah, so I've seen also in different countries that happening. But I would say the worst, in terms of detention conditions, the worst detention conditions I've seen were definitely in Central America, Caribbean, and some South American countries. I've never seen prisons in Africa, okay, besides what I've seen on TV or YouTube or things like that. I've seen very bad conditions there, but I was never there, so I cannot talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
So we would like to know that what are the popular and effective methods that are being used to protect and improve the mental health of the convicts?
Oof, that's a very difficult one. And I would say that we are doing very little in general. Okay, and what do I mean by that? What I mean is that, let me distinguish two situations. One of them is persons that we consider that are mentally ill, and because they are mentally ill, they are considered impaired. That means that they cannot be judged responsible. They cannot be considered responsible for their actions, and therefore they may serve a sentence in the special institution that is not a prison, even though it's very much like a prison, but it is an institution that would provide some sort of medical care or support or mental health support. So this is one situation. And in general, depending, of course, it depends very much from country to country. I would say that countries like Belgium, for instance, have an excellent service at that level. Not in every prison, but at least they have a couple of new forensic clinics that are in fact managed by a private company. So they had a public-private partnership, and this part is specifically handled by a private organization together with the Ministry of Health. And so this is one part of the equation, let's say, the ones that the court has considered impaired and they go to these specific institutions. Now, the problem is that we have a huge percentage of people in prison that do have mental issues, mental problems and challenges. So that means that for those, we are not really dealing with them as if they had a mental problem. We are considering them common criminals, common offenders, and we do not necessarily treat them to respond to some specific needs that they may have. For different reasons, we may not have a proper diagnosis about their situation. We see very often, just to give you an example, one of the projects that we've developed was called MENACE, Mental Health, Aging and Palliative Care in Prisons. We have another one that is called AWARE, and it's also one training of staff to be aware of mental health issues of inmates, of the ones that are, of course, in the common population. But the situation there is that if you ask to someone in the prison service, what's the number of mentally ill inmates that exist in a certain country, they will give you the numbers of the ones that the court considered as mentally ill. And then you ask them, okay, and what about the others? Well, the others, there are two possible answers. One is we don't know. The other one is, well, we don't know because the medical records are not open, so the prison service does not have access to the medical record and therefore does not know the specific disease problems of a certain person. And so what we did is we tried to go through indirect methods, like for instance, trying to understand how much does one country spend on mental health pills or medicine, and the amount is enormous. So that means that in fact the problem exists. Everybody understands that the problem exists, but countries normally do not have the capacity to deal with it, because that would mean that you would need more staff, more specialized staff, you would need to separate certain inmates from other inmates so that they could be in a different environment. And so we have this situation, you know, where people may come to prison because they already have some mental issues. And this is very common, you know, someone with a mental problem is in prison, goes out and comes back again because he reacted to the police. The police also does not know how to understand what's going on with that person, and he goes back to prison. So what I was going to say is that yes, the problem exists. It's very problematic in every country. Some countries have been reducing the investment in community-based centers to support mentally ill persons, and as an effect, we are having more people in prison with those problems. So that means that whenever we cannot respond in the community, providing proper care, medication, and so on to people that need it, they will end up committing a crime or doing something that they are perceived as violent, and then they will come and feed the prison service. And there they will not have the proper care, they will serve their sentence, come back again, do the same, and come back to prison on the other hand. So it's really a cycle that we would need to break. On the one hand, providing proper care in the community, of course. On the other hand, having the necessary staff and facilities to deal with the mentally ill inside prisons. And that means that staff needs to deal with, you know, imagine yourself as a prison officer dealing with someone with schizophrenia or something. So if you don't understand what's going on with that person, you may perceive the person as being violent because he wants to be violent. And so you react in a certain way, and all the security measures that you put in place are according to your perception of the problem. If you would understand that what's going on with that person, it's really a problem that comes with his condition, with his mentally ill condition, probably you would refer the person to the doctor, to the psychiatrist or to the psychologist. As you don't perceive it as such, you treat it in a violent way. So you treat it to restrain violence with violence. And this is really very, very problematic. I don't know if I answered your question. I talk too much.
Yes. No, it's great. Thank you.
Thank you. And last question is from me.
Mm-hmm.
What are your suggestions to young lawyers who want to work in this area and improve their skills?
Well, the first thing you are already doing, that means that you are already talking with people that work in the area, so that you raise your awareness about the different topics. So that's really excellent what you are doing. The next thing I would suggest is for you to go and visit a prison or a couple of prisons, you know, different units. I would recommend you to go to you know, an open prison, a closed regime prison. Go to a prison with women, because there the reality is, of course, very different from what happens in a men's prison. The conditions that normally bring a woman to a prison are very different than the ones that bring men, and the consequences also for society are very different. So it would be interesting to do that, but also to visit some juvenile centers where you could understand that very often we have too harsh laws, and that a very large percentage of people that we have in prison should not be there. If you visit the prisons and you talk to people, you will understand that there is a problem of overpopulation, there is a problem of overcrowding, and you could easily reduce by 10, 15, 20% the number of inmates if you would have a proper community sentence system or a proper probation system. So, you know, visiting and understanding that is really important. The other thing I would suggest is, you know, is really connecting to organizations such as ICPA, who could give you, you know, a broader perspective, not only of what's going on in your country, but also what's going on in other countries and what other countries are doing. Just to give you an example, and we have that in Justice Trends magazine. We have several countries and several ministers talking about penal reform in their countries. And to give you an example, in Portugal 3 years ago, the legislation changed, and so crimes that would have a sentence framework up to 2 years in prison, those 2 years in prison were reduced by community measures, alternative measures. So if those crimes are up to 2 years, that means that probably they were not, you know, those are not very dangerous persons, though they don't pose a risk to security and so on. They still need to serve their sentence, but probably they can do it either monitored through any sort of electronic monitoring, or they could even just, you know, pay their debt back to society by working to some public projects or things like that.
Community service.
Yeah, exactly, community service. So, you know, going into that, understanding what's going on in terms of penal reform, understanding why do you have such a large number of preventive prisoners in your country. And for instance, we are now running a project exactly on that topic. It's called Pre-Trial, and it's really on pre-trial reduction and the implementation of alternative measures, and looking at what other countries are doing, what are the different responses by the different countries. I think that is really important, and that would help you not just to support the people you have to defend if you chose that way, but also from the legal framework reform point of view, to see where you could bring some contributions. And I think that those would be my recommendations.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Me again. I don't like to sound like a fanboy, but I'm still curious about the John Legend photo.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So normally, whenever I use that slide, I have two questions. One is, why did you start in prison when you were 16? But the first one is always, what is John Legend doing there? And yes, so it's very easy. The answer to that one is that John Legend leads a movement in the US that is called Free America. It's a movement against mass incarceration. And he came to visit Portugal to a concert a few years ago, 2015. And I was asked by his team to organize a visit to a prison. And because he wanted to understand how the Portuguese process of decriminalization drug consumption worked. So in Portugal, whenever someone uses drugs, that's not a crime. That's a public health problem. So that means that we have, those persons do not go to prison, but they are treated in the community to reduce their addiction and so on. But we also have, of course, programs, specific programs for people that use drugs inside prison. So he came to Portugal to visit that. And the reason is that the United States have 25%, they have 5% of the world population, but they have 25% of the world's prison population. And so he leads this movement in the US against mass incarceration, and is an activist for that cause. So that's why he was there.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Any other question?
I guess nobody has any other questions.
Okay. So,
Then,
I have a question now.
Yeah.
So
please.
what are you going to do with this information? So what are the next steps for you?
Do you want to answer that? Sir, so let me try to explain. We're doing interviews with different people from different country, and we're trying to gather information on what do we call it? Law on criminal execution, the developments in law on criminal execution. So we're trying to make a report on what's going on in the world and in our country, and it's morely of COVID-19 wise. We're putting up this information, and we're trying to have I don't know, something good, something great.
Okay. So if you of course, if you're looking at COVID-19, the ICPA website is a great website where you can have information.
We're on it, sir. We're on it.
You are in it. Yeah. You also have the Europris website, which has a lot of information about what's going on in Europe. So those would be the main sources of information. So
for sure.
Yeah. So feel free to contact me if there's something you need. I wish you all the luck in the world to your future in terms of work and studies. And it was very pleasant to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Neves. It was an honor to have an interview with you and meet you. Thank you for your time and interest.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was my pleasure. Okay. All the best then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.